You know, for a movie that's basically about a bunch of teenagers that don't properly communicate with each other, ironically, there's a few things this movie probably could have communicated to me a little better. I'm just saying, it's kind of funny how life works itself out like that, you know? Oh well. Cue the music. Hey, what's up everybody? How's it going? How y'all doing today? Welcome back. And today's movie is called Your Name Engraved Herein. And I do have to say, as technically proficient as this film really came off as, I think they could have done a little bit more work in the editing room, personally. I kind of alluded to it already, but this movie did tell you a lot of things, and a lot of things about this movie were interesting, but it kind of didn't telegraph it to you properly, and it got a little bit wiggly here and there, so I don't know, it happens sometimes. But anyway, the basic plot of the movie, it takes place in Taiwan in the late 80s, shortly after martial law has been gotten rid of apparently in that area. And the story takes place at an all-boys school, and it centers around these two teenage boys as they're, starting to fall in love. The movie focuses on one character more than the other one, and if you'll forgive me, I don't remember their names, but that's essentially the story. Not the main character, but the main character's love interest. I believe his nickname is Birdie, so I might refer to him as that throughout the video. And despite the fact that I thought there was at least several scenes that probably should have ended up on the cutting room floor, this movie was actually quite technically proficient, surprisingly so. And I guess if I'm gonna jump off from that point, I might as well just start with the positives. And the first positive that you'll note is that the music in this movie is fucking spectacular. It's really good. I think there might have been one, maybe 2 or 3 scenes where I wasn't feeling the music, but every other time it was really good. And I'm not 100% certain, but I could have swore, and I haven't heard the song in a really long time, but I'm pretty sure, 95%, that there's this kind of instrumental version of the traditional Irish song Danny Boy just kind of playing in the background for the majority of the film. And even though you didn't hear the lyrics of that song, it does have this kind of dour, slightly miserable sensibility that really played into the entire tone of the film. So I thought that was a really good choice. And I also very much dug the way that they chose to end the movie. They could have ended it one of 100 different ways, and where they cut it off, I thought was the appropriate point. And also, for no apparent reason, the cinematography was really good. Who'da thunk? And the reason why I bring that up is because with your typical either romantic comedies or romantic dramedies, whatever you want to call them, the cinematography is never really, it doesn't need to be anything special. Because typically in those types of movies, it's just are the characters right there? Can we see the characters? Can we see them emoting towards each other? All right, that's all that matters. Yeah, we're good here. That's how it normally goes. But in this movie, I thought they picked a couple of kooky angles that I never would have thought of, that I thought that were a little bit creative. And it was just kind of a different perspective that I'm not used to seeing. And as I said, the movie wasn't required to do that because it's just a character movie, but the movie still had cool angles that it wanted you to see the story from. And I'm like, oh, that was cool. And normally I don't comment on the acting when it comes to movies that I'm not, a speaker of the language, but I could actually really feel the chemistry between the two main leads, for some reason, more so than other films, which is something that, again, I would also attribute to the cinematography, because that helped portray them a little bit, in a different light, possibly. But then on top of that, there's actually some really long takes in this movie that are quite good, over 2 minutes long. So suffice to say, from a technical standpoint, this movie is actually pretty good, and I also liked how the movie didn't try to spell every little thing out for you. The movie didn't spoon feed you every answer that it wanted you to figure out on your own. But therein also lies a problem, because that made for a lot of confusion for me in a lot of different parts that probably should have ended up on the editing room floor. And also the pace of the movie got a little weird. I was bored in some places, but really paying attention in others. Plus, there was a few things that weren't all that believable, at least I don't think, but that could just be my own perception. For example, the movie doesn't explicitly lay this out, but from what I can gather, it seems like these two kids are going to this military prep sleepaway parochial type of school. But also at the same time, it feels like they can just come and go whenever they please, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense considering that they just got done with this martial law, kind of lockdown. So that didn't make a whole lot of sense. And also the film kind of sets things up but doesn't ever qualify them at any point in time, and that happens several times throughout the movie. For example, one of the main characters is hanging out with this older gentleman, and it's just kind of a random scene, and the whole scene felt completely out of place because at one point this older gentleman starts making really aggressive sexual advances towards the main character in question, and it's not because there's two men being intimate on screen. I don't care about that. It's people can do whatever they want, but the whole point of the scene was completely lost on me because it was not set up. Like, I had no idea like who this character was or what the main character was doing at this person's house. And then lo and behold, when the older gentleman starts to make his sexual advances, this, you know, that happens, and then a minute later the scene ends, and then it's just kind of never addressed again. So I'm like, the whole time I was left with like, okay, who was the older guy? Why was he in the movie? What was the nature of the scene? And what did that have to do with the story? It just didn't make any sense. And I was just kind of like, okay, did that really need to be in there? And I would also say, just from a general standpoint, the movie didn't really signal to you properly that certain things were happening, and also it didn't represent the stakes for some things on occasion also, and that made for, it was a it was kind of a messy plot. It's almost as if the movie felt like a series of vignettes that were pertaining to the same characters and took place in the same universe, but they were all just kind of like thrown together. And this movie felt like an assembly cut. And if you don't know what that is, Google it and you'll know what I'm talking about. It just felt like a lot of things were very, very unrefined and undefined. I guess that's the best way that I can put it. And another thing that I thought was like real weird was the fact that not the main character, but Birdie, his love interest, he seems very, very, very bipolar. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to people with, you know, mental disorders, but his character just flip-flopped at the drop of a dime. And it just didn't feel, it didn't feel natural. It just didn't feel, it was not organic. It just felt weird. But that just kind of feeds into my earlier point, is that some things should have just been on the cutting room floor, or maybe they just should have added like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue here and there. Maybe it would have went a little bit better. But at the end of the day, it's like I said, guys, this movie does have some like very, very, very strong technical points to it, but there was just some story elements that were just a little confusing and may or may not have been out of place. So I think overall, for a score out of 10, I think I'm gonna go slightly positive. I'm gonna give it a 5.4 out of 10. It's very, very clear that a lot of craft went into the technicality behind this film, but it's just, it felt a little bit too relative in some places where it should have been a little bit more concrete, and that kind of made the story suffer a little bit. But anyway, guys, those are my thoughts. What are your guys' thoughts? Have you seen this movie? Have you heard of it? Do you think my points are valid? Hop in the comments. Let me know what's up. Other than that, if you like this video, give me a like, subscribe, share, hit the bell, do all the other usual YouTube shenanigans, and I will catch you guys next time.